Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're exploring one of the most unflinching, honestly kind of provocative examinations of corporate life ever written. We're looking at a body of work known as the 2026 Corporate Machiavelli Essays. These were written by a highly successful CXO, someone who navigated their way to the very top of the corporate ladder. But here's the absolute catch. They wrote these essays after being diagnosed with an incurable disease. Writing under a pseudonym with literally nothing left to lose, this executive published 55 unfiltered essays as a final testament on how corporate power actually operates. It's a raw, unvarnished look right behind the curtain of modern success.
I want you to just stop for a second and think about your own office. Think about the people who actually get promoted, the ones who hold the real power. Because, we're taught from a very young age this deep-seated societal belief in meritocracy. The idea that if you just keep your head down and work hard, you'll automatically be rewarded. But does hard work actually guarantee success in the modern corporate world? Well, according to our source material, the answer is a resounding no.
And this brilliantly illustrates the harsh contrast between the comforting illusions we're taught and the stark reality of corporate environments. The author borrows the concept of the blue pill and the red pill. You've got the blue pill lies, the belief that hard work alone is rewarded, that the company is a family, that your colleagues are your friends, and that the system is fundamentally fair. But then you face the red pill truths. The reality is that the corporate world is a game of power, not merit. Your colleagues, they're your competitors. The company doesn't actually care about you, and success relies heavily on strategic action, not just putting in long hours.
So here is our survival blueprint to the corporate state. 1. The corporate illusion shattered. 2. The high mock mindset. 3. Rules of the power game. 4. Profiles in corporate power. 5. Your strategic survival toolkit. And finally, 6. The path to mastery.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the corporate illusion shattered, corporations as feudal states.
We really need to completely reframe how we look at our modern corporate structures. Because beneath the smooth glass and all that modern jargon, they're actually built on some very ancient foundations. If we trace the historical evolution of these power dynamics, we see a fascinating through line. In 1532, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince, detailing how rulers gain and maintain power in Renaissance Florence. Fast forward to 1967, and Anthony J. wrote Management and Machiavelli, arguing that corporations are essentially states with barons and courtiers. In 1996, the anonymous book The Mafia Manager applied underworld discipline to legitimate business, and that leads us straight to the 2026 Corporate Machiavelli Essays. The venues have changed from cold stone castles to air-conditioned glass boardrooms, sure, but human psychology, self-interest, and the pursuit of power? They remain entirely unchanged.
Which brings us to a clear definition of corporate Machiavellianism. It's the application of statecraft and strategic power dynamics to corporate life, where managing perception is just as crucial as managing reality. Leaders who truly understand this realize that their companies operate exactly like self-contained states. They have their own orthodoxies, their own diplomats, and their own hidden heresies lurking right under the surface.
Moving right along to Section 2, the high Mac mindset, psychology of the power player.
So who actually thrives in this kind of environment? Research within the essays points to the high mock personality. This is the exact type of person who naturally fills top managerial posts. Their traits include emotional detachment, strategic manipulation, pragmatic morality, self-protection, risk calculation, and viewing others as instruments. High mocks view the corporate world purely as a game, with clear winners and losers. For them, emotions like anger, fear, or even enthusiasm aren't necessarily felt authentically in the office. Instead, they're weapons. They are deployed strategically to achieve a specific outcome. Other people are simply pieces on a chessboard.
Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is this highly counterintuitive maxim from the text. Talk dumb like a 100 IQ person. Now, we're usually taught to constantly prove how smart we are, right? But the author points out that appearing less intelligent is often a brilliant strategic advantage. It drastically lowers expectations, makes you seem far less threatening to insecure superiors, and allows you to gather vital information while everyone else is busy underestimating you.
Let's look at Section 3, Rules of the Power Game, Tactics for Survival.
Now that we know how these players think, let's look at how they actually act. It's time to introduce the tactical rules of office politics. And remember, the core premise here is that politics isn't a distraction from your job. Politics is the core activity of corporate life. The golden rule of engagement is this: don't enter any office political battle without asking,
What's in it for me and what's in it for them? Every single political engagement, every alliance, every conflict must be meticulously evaluated for its costs and benefits before you commit. You never act on pure emotion or a sense of righteous justice. You act on strategic value.
Then we have this brutal piece of advice. If you must lie, be brief. Take a second to really reflect on that. So the crucial point is that pragmatic morality dictates deception should be minimal. The longer and more elaborate the lie, the more likely it is to be discovered. The corporate Machiavellian tells the truth when it serves them, and if they absolutely must deceive, they do it with absolute efficiency to avoid unforced errors.
When it comes to the people around you, the advice on human capital is equally ruthless. You should choose allies based on utility, not whether you actually like them. Keep those alliances temporary so you're never dependent on one person. Keep your enemies even closer so you know exactly what they're planning. And crucially, when managing subordinates, remember that loyalty is purchased through self-interest, not earned through affection. Fear, practically speaking, is a much more reliable motivator than love, because people who fear you simply won't betray you.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. Profiles and corporate power, the archetypes. Let's break down the distinct psychological profiles of the people you will absolutely meet in every single office environment. If we compare these corporate players side by side, a very clear picture emerges. Starting out, we have the naive pawn. They truly believe the blue pill lies and use denial as a defense mechanism. We all know one, they usually organize the office birthdays. Next is the cynical operator. They are ruthless and amoral, but they often self-destruct because they just make too many enemies. Now, compare that to the pragmatic professional. They understand the game, but use restraint and empathy. They balance ethics with strategy. And finally, the master strategist, or the corporate Machiavelli. They're supremely adaptable, use emotional detachment, and perfectly balance power without drawing unnecessary fire.
Moving right along to Section 5, your strategic survival toolkit, information warfare.
To become that master strategist, you need the right tools, moving from theory into practice. The foundation of this toolkit relies on this really stark quote, "Give me control of the media for 30 days, and I can get the masses to believe anything." In a corporate setting, the media is the internal narrative. The overarching point here is that whoever controls the narrative controls the final outcome. Perception literally is reality. Managing how you're perceived requires the exact same care a top CEO uses to manage a global brand.
So what's actually in this amoral toolkit? First, control the narrative. Second, hoard useful information. Information is power. Release only what serves your specific purpose. Third, create plausible deniability so you can always maintain the appearance of innocence if things go south. Fourth, quietly identify and exploit the weaknesses and needs of those around you. And fifth, always have options. Never, ever depend on just one person, one alliance, or even one job. You must always be thinking 3 moves ahead to maintain your leverage.
And that brings us to Section 6, the path to mastery, evolution of a player. How do we actually synthesize all of these profoundly uncomfortable truths into actionable personal growth? Well, the source text makes one thing very clear. The goal is not to become a worse person, but a more effective person. Taking this red pill and seeing the corporate world for what it truly is, it isn't an invitation to become evil or malicious. It's entirely about amoral effectiveness. The system is already Machiavellian. Refusing to play the game doesn't make you virtuous, it just makes you a victim.
The evolution of a conscious corporate player follows these 5 clear steps. Step 1 is awakening, realizing the reality of the game and finally shedding those blue pill illusions. Step 2 is education, learning the actual rules of power and strategy. Step 3 is practice, cautiously applying these principles in your daily interactions. Step 4 is mastery, successfully navigating the corporate state with detachment and skill. And finally, Step 5 is wisdom, understanding the true limits of your power and knowing that restraint is often just as important as action.
The corporate world is a game of power. The rules have been exactly the same since Machiavelli walked the streets of Florence. The only question the author leaves us with is this: are you playing the game consciously or unconsciously? You can choose to remain a naive pawn in someone else's strategy, or you can master the reality of the corporate state and take control of the board. So tomorrow morning when you walk into the office, which piece will you be?